Actually, one of the top 10 most vulnerable one of the top 10 countries most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So this is important here as well. Climate change causes extreme weather more often. It causes droughts more often, floods more often. So people who live in rural communities, farmers, obviously will suffer from droughts and floods, as will people around the country whose homes might get flooded or businesses might get flooded. There are rising sea levels caused by climate change, so coastal areas may get flooded more often as well. So there are a combination of factors, but generally the effects of climate change in terms of changing the weather, increasing sea levels, will affect countries, particularly in the tropical areas like Thailand. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the UN body responsible for assessing climate science, published a report a few months ago which said that climate change is definitely happening. It is caused by human activity, and already global temperatures have risen by 1.1 degrees, and this is already having an effect, but that actually if temperatures increase by more than 1.5 degrees, then that will have a catastrophic effect on the atmosphere and on the climate. But they also said that if we take action now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and achieve net zero in greenhouse gas emissions by the middle of the century, so by 2050 or so, then we can still limit global temperature increases to 1.5 degrees. In 2015, when the Paris Agreement was signed, we agreed that every 5 years all countries would have to set out both their short-term plans in their national determined contributions, but also their long-term strategy. And this is the 5th COP since then, so this is the moment at which people have to review what's happened and make their new plans. So the first step is for governments to announce new targets and make new commitments. But of course that has to be accompanied by concrete action. So the UK published 2 days ago now a net zero strategy, which is a whole economy strategy in terms of what we're going to do to deliver net zero by 2050. Well, I think the costs of inaction on climate change will be very high because many countries are vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So if you have more extreme weather, more floods, more droughts, rising sea levels, then the cost of inaction in the long term is going to be much higher than actually acting now. But what's interesting actually is in the UK it was the Confederation of British Industry that was lobbying the British government to set a net zero target. And why did they do this? It's because they saw a massive commercial opportunity. The future in terms of energy is low carbon energy, renewable energy. So they saw an opportunity there to be world leaders, and the government then agreed to legislate for net zero in the UK. So I think for the people who invest in low carbon technology and renewables early on, there will be huge dividends. A week or two ago, and I think it was 30 or 40 Thai companies did commit to net zero. So this is starting to happen. And I think the role of the big corporates is important, both in terms of their own emissions, but also in terms of giving confidence to the government and others that this is achievable. And they will be part of the solution, as I've said, in terms of investing in low carbon technology and changing the way they work. So I think for governments all around the world, the big question in terms of committing to net zero and reducing carbon emissions is, well, what effect will this have on the economy? So you really need businesses to work with you to make the investments and support you in achieving the goal. And I think that's what's starting to happen. Thailand is one of the top 20 emitters of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. So the government's focus on making the economy sustainable, on moving to renewables, these are all things that the government is talking about already, and these can actually help address the problem. So what I want to do is for us to work together internationally, all countries exchanging views, exchanging technologies to make sure that our transition to a low carbon economy can happen as quickly as possible.